My name is Amy Margolis, and I'm an attorney who's worked in this space for about 20 years, long before we even called this a space. I've worked with cannabis companies from startups through IPO. I've helped support underrepresented entrepreneurs in the space, and I'm here to talk about building your mission, vision, values. When we think about starting a business, we often think about making money. We think about what we're bringing to market. We think about what our store is going to look like. And we often don't think about what is the foundation, what is the why behind the business. And the truth is that without understanding the why, without building a purposeful foundation for your business, the chance of your success decreases exponentially. So there's an exercise, and companies do this across the country, small companies, big brands. They do it over and over again to get it right. And it's a mission, vision, values exercise. When you think about the legs of a stool of a company, you think about the following things. What's the concept? How are you going to fund it? Who's your team? And then why are you doing this? And I want to say that the why does not have to be a socially responsible why, although I think it should be. The why does not have to be like your heartfelt why. Your why has to be, what is the story? Your why has to be what drives you. Your why has to be what will keep you going. But it's really more than that. It's more than just the concept. It's more than just how are we structuring this company. It's more than just who your leadership team. It is, in fact, the foundation of your company. So success is driven by a lot of things. It's driven by a lot of things in cannabis, but it's also driven by a lot of things in every industry. And cannabis is not so different than everything else. We tend to think that cannabis lives in this other planet because it's federally illegal. We tend to think cannabis is somehow more special or more different. It's harder and more challenging sometimes, but it is not so different from making and selling widgets. It's not so different from making and selling a Coca-Cola. It's not so different from having a store at the mall. Are there challenges? Of course. So we can take lessons from traditional business. We can take lessons from other startups and other industries. And those don't have to be heavily regulated industries. We can look at other industries and say, what can I learn from this? Where can I derive my direction? And so success, we know, cannot just be driven by your desire to make money or your desire to be rich. Starbucks was built certainly with the idea of making money, but it was not built solely for the purpose of making money. Howard Schultz had a passion for coffee. He believed in it. He had something that he saw as the future of coffee. And was it disruptive? It was. Was it interesting? It was. Was there white space? There was. But he was not just driven by the idea of making money. And I would propose during this talk and other talks that I've given that real success is determined by your purpose and direction. And I would go so far as to say that success is driven by your why. So let's talk about, for a few minutes, what that means. Every brand, and everything's a brand, right? So just because you're not selling chocolate bars and you have a store, that doesn't mean you're not a brand. Just because you're a production facility that's not consumer facing, that doesn't mean you're not a brand. You are a brand, and every brand needs a story. It's what compels your customer. And the story cannot exist without your why. The story cannot exist without understanding your mission, your vision, and your values. And I put on this slide that this is your company's North Star. And you've heard a lot about, I think, especially in the last 5 or 10 years, this idea of corporate culture. This is what drives that culture. It should be your guidepost. your mission, your vision, and your values should be your guidepost for both your culture and your growth story. And you'll hear about growth stories from other speakers. You'll hear about it as it relates to investment, but it is your North Star. We talked about some companies like production facilities not being forward-facing, but your mission, vision, values also matters, because if you are consumer-facing, if you are public-facing, your customers, your clients, all see your mission, your vision, your values reflected in the tangible brand story. So not just the kind of holistic why, but the physical manifestation of that in your brand. And we talked a second ago about corporate culture. This is information that also drives your employees, it drives your executives, and it's something that you talk to investors about. Your mission, vision, values should include primary leadership team and can be revisited as the company grows and evolves. What that means is that companies are, they change. And companies, as they get bigger or they contract or they grow to different states, we're not a stagnant thing. There's something that always needs to be nimble, especially in cannabis. You need to pivot, and your mission and your vision and your values can be revisited as your company grows. And so, you can think about it in two ways. It guides your growth, and your growth guides your mission, your vision, and your values. So let's talk about what each of these things mean. What is your mission? Your mission is an organization-specific purpose. It's what you do, how you do it, and why you do it. And we're going to go through examples of each of these subsections. Your vision is an aspirational statement. So this is an actual exercise that your team is going to participate in. It's something that's going to be on paper. It's something that's going to, I went in recently a cannabis business where it was painted across the entire wall. So it is your aspirational statement. Who do you hope to be? What do you hope to accomplish? What are those objectives? What are you dreaming about when you're dreaming about success? And then your values. That's one of those things that seems like it would be self-explanatory, but it really is what you believe in. And again, that does not have to be socially responsible. It doesn't have to be focused on sustainability. We think sometimes about these as creating these soft touch companies, or these companies that are focused on being a B Corp or being a company that does good. But every company, even if ultimately you are just trying to make money, needs to have gone through the mission, vision, values exercise. So let's look at some examples, because when you go through this process, it's hard sometimes to know what each of these things should look like. So here are some examples of mission statements that you might have heard. The company Life is Good, to spread the power of optimism. It's not hard to see that reflected in their product, because every t-shirt says life is good. I heard the founder and CEO of that company talk not so long ago, and it was clear that not only was that mission reflected, physically manifesting itself on the clothes, but that CEO and founder started that company because he truly believed that an optimistic perspective would lead to success and happiness. Sweet Green. I know we've seen Sweet Green in the news a little bit recently. To inspire healthier communities by connecting people to real food. And you can see, especially in that one, this kind of concrete nature of the mission statement. It's not touchy-feely. It's not emotionally driven. It is the actual, in fact, mission to inspire healthier communities, connect people to real food. They serve salads. Patagonia. So Patagonia is a mission-driven company, right? If you go by a Patagonia store, you see painted on their wall about saving salmon, about environmental stewardship. You read about it in all of their pamphlets, and if you get their catalog, it is clear where they'd make their political donations. And so their mission is to build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire, and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. I mean, wow, what a mouthful, right? What a thing to try and accomplish. What a mission. But it is, and I think this Patagonia one's a really great one, because when you look at it, it is almost like a driver. So it's a directive or order to the company. And that's what you're creating when you're creating your mission statement, right? This is my mission to outer space. This is my mission to save the planet. This is my mission to bring optimism to the masses. LinkedIn, to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. So this one is a good example of a one that's not focused on social responsibility, and I'm sure all of you are on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, you should be on LinkedIn. LinkedIn did not pay me to say that, but it's clear that that's what LinkedIn does. They're connecting professionals, and that's making people more productive and successful. Starbucks, we talked about Starbucks earlier. To inspire and nourish the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. So you can see, I mean, Starbucks is also an interesting one, right? Again, it's not a stewardship message. It's not Patagonia, it's not Sweet Green, but it is clear that that mission statement has manifested itself in the creation of what are essentially neighborhood cafes. You can go back and forth about whether you think Starbucks is a good company or a bad company, or corporate coffee is good or bad, but that statement is exactly how they drove their growth. One cup of coffee, one neighborhood at a time. So vision statement. Remember, this one is aspirational. So this is something where this is who you aspire to be. This is who you dream the company will be. Southwest Air. This was maybe written before the pandemic. To become the world's most loved, most flown, and most profitable airline. I actually happen to love this Southwest airline because it's so literal. Like, what do we aspire to? We aspire for people to love us, for the most people to fly us, and we want to be the airline that makes the most amount of money. I mean, maybe we all want those things for our company. IKEA. Our vision is to create a better everyday life for many people. And when you read the IKEA one, I want you to note the kind of simplicity of the dream. So IKEA is a company that's been around a long time. It's had astonishing international growth. Every single person watching this probably has a piece of IKEA furniture in their house. And this is a very simple approach. Our vision is to create a better everyday life for many people. I mean, you can talk about how you might do that through boxes of prefabricated furniture, but we all can relate to that for IKEA. McDonald's, to be the best quick service restaurant experience. Again, super literal. We just want to be the best fast food company out there. That is what McDonald's aspires to be. Being the best means providing outstanding quality, service, cleanliness, value, so we make every customer smile. And you can see as we go through these, the kind of connective tissue between each of these vision statements. They're clear, they're concise, they're the goal the company has to move the world forward and give web designers and developers the best tools and services. Adobe. So you can, again, these are not so soft, they're not so touchy-feely, and they are not an abstract. And I think that that's something important to note about this. And we can see with Starbucks, to establish Starbucks as the premier purveyor of the finest coffee in the world while maintaining our uncompromising principles while we grow. And I put that in there because I want you to be able to contrast the difference between, and we often have founders ask, how do I differentiate between my vision statement and my mission statement? Because I think when you think about vision, it does feel kind of more dreamy. And it's really not. It's really this concrete thought. And so I think it's worth, if you have the slide presentation in front of you or access to it, to be able to contrast that statement with this kind of mission statement to inspire and nurture the human spirit. Core values. I would suggest to you that if you do not have core values driving your business, it will not succeed. If you do not have a kind of like bellwether for what it means to be a good business person, that you will wander around your industry. And I think Uber, again, we could talk about whether Uber really, we do the right thing, period. We could talk about whether or not that's true, but this is your anchor point. Your values, your values in your life guide your decisions, right? Do you value being a good parent and a good neighbor? Do you value civil rights? Do you value freedom? Those are like your anchor points in this universe. And that's the same thing for your business. LL Bean, treat your customers like human beings. What a value, right? What an anchor point for you to pass to your employees, to build your corporate culture around. Intel, listen to all ideas. This is a company that is an innovator, right? They make microchips, they work on computers, they innovate. So they are saying to their customers, they're saying to their executives, they're saying to their employees, we want to hear your creativity. And in a perfect world, a perfect corporate world, that will in fact trickle down into everything you do. Johnson & Johnson, we must be good citizens. You can see, again, I would urge you to go through and compare and contrast these 3 different types of statements that companies create as they're going through this. Disney, openness, honestness, integrity, courage, respect, diversity, balance. These are the things that matter. This is our anchor point. If your company does not have it, it will flounder. Where does this live? So you go through this process, and we're going to talk about how to go through this process in a moment. Where does this live? How do people know about it? They don't know about it through osmosis. You're not expecting people to understand this through kind of nuanced brand communication necessarily. So once you've gone through this, where should it live? In your pitch deck. So especially for those of you who are startups, this can be in your pitch deck. I would suggest even that this is in the beginning of your pitch deck, especially if you've not gone to market yet. So if you don't have something to show to an investor, meaning you don't have a product that's already on the shelves, you don't have a retail store that's already open and you're opening your next one, you need to give investors something to believe in. And the things that investors believe in are your team. Almost across the board, these are the things investors believe in. They believe in your team, and they believe in your why. So this is a crucial piece of your pitch deck. Your employee handbook. I know employee handbooks are expensive. They're especially expensive for startups. I know not every company is big enough to have one, but again, if this is the North Star of your corporate culture, if this is the guidepost for how you treat your employees and your employees treat your customers, it is important for employees to know what your mission is, what your vision is, and what your values are. Other fundraising documents. I think probably those of you who are watching this are not quite to a public offering, but if you feel like taking the time and going and looking at the WeWork story, you can see, which is like fascinating, and you should all go like watch the movies and read the books. But you will see that in their public offering documents, the dozens and dozens of pages were focused on their mission, vision, values, on their why, what drives them. And I will say, if you do choose to go watch some of the movies or read some of the books about Adam Neumann, the wild founder of WeWork, you will see that investors decided to make that investment because they believed in the message, the mission, the vision, the values that Adam Neumann was presenting and selling. So it can go in your executive summaries, it can go in emails to potential investors, it can go in your IPO, hopefully you all go and go public, and then I can read your mission, vision, values in your documents. Shared during trainings. We just talked about WeWork. So eventually your company will be big enough that you do large-scale corporate trainings, or even small ones. And when you look at how Starbucks, which we've talked about, or WeWork, if you go and you watch the recordings of those trainings, what you'll see is a constant reference to the why. And that in fact, let's keep talking about WeWork for a second. In fact, for WeWork, that is what kept employees who were maybe underpaid or not so well treated on board, because they believed they were building intentional community. Whether it was true or not, that was the message they were receiving. Potential customers, and I put either explicitly or implicitly, because a company like Patagonia, they're explicit about their mission and their vision and the values. And if you were to go and ask somebody wearing a Patagonia jacket, what do you think Patagonia believes in? Every single one of us would be able to answer that question, because they've explicitly described to the public what that is. And then your website. So not everyone puts their mission, vision, and values on their website. I think that will be dependent on how closely related your product is or your brand is, or how intricately those are connected. But that's another place that we often see them. How should it be applied practically? And I'm going to go sort of quickly through this because I think we've talked about some of this. Choices about growth, expansion, direction. So Starbucks, every neighborhood needs a cup of Starbucks coffee, and they go from neighborhood to neighborhood. This is something where you just say to yourself as you're making these decisions as a team leader or as an executive, is this decision about growth match what our mission is? Are we staying aligned with the decisions that we've made? Branding decisions. I mean, you're going to hear in other classes about creating a brand, and cannabis has been a industry that's actually been pretty far behind in terms of branding. And we have not always, I hope nobody gets their feelings hurt, we've not always made brand decisions that are extraordinarily sophisticated. And some of that is because we have challenges in how we go to market or where we're able to advertise. But cannabis branding, even when it's beautiful, doesn't always tell a story. And so using your mission, vision, values to guide your brand decision can help customers understand a cohesive story and help them decide to purchase your product or go into your store. Leadership and hiring choices. If you hire somebody who is not aligned with your mission, vision, values, you are making a poor hiring decision. You need people who are on board and who believe in those directions given by that, especially in senior management. But we talked about WeWork. That's the same thing that kept low-level $10 and $15 an hour employees around, or senior corporate folks who were not getting any equity. So your leadership and hiring decisions, everybody should be on the same page. Choosing investors. I mean, this is a really interesting one because cannabis does not have a lot of access to capital. So oftentimes if I'm talking to folks and they are talking about that they want to be picky about their investors, it's hard to say, you should be super picky. However, if you can, in a market that capital is constrained and you cannot go get a small business loan and there's only so many people writing checks, if you can find an investor who is aligned with your mission, vision, and values, you are likely to have a positive relationship, because even if they don't necessarily agree with some concrete decisions you make, you're all following the same North Star. You're all headed in the same direction. This is similar to the branding decision, but I mean it much more literally. So if branding is telling your story, approach to products, packaging, retail decisions, and design, it is something that is tangibly reflected in those practical decisions. Sustainability. Again, your company, as we saw on a bunch of these, there was no focus on environmental sustainability. However, if you have that as part of your core values, for example, and in cannabis, it's really hard to have that because we have disposable vape pens and we have exit packaging and we have superfluous, child-proof packaging and pop tops and all sorts of garbage that definitely is challenging for somebody with a sustainability mission. That's something that you should be communicating. employee pay, compensation, and ownership. This is the same sort of idea, which is that, if you're a company that says, we want to feel like a family, that's one of our core values, then maybe you pay your employees above average, or maybe you pay them a living wage. Maybe you think about who gets equity. Maybe you make a decision that you have an employee equity plan. But those are all things that should be informed by your mission, your vision, and your values. Why is important cannabis? It's important everywhere, but I want to say this. Cannabis is born out of progressive causes. The war on drugs has failed. We believe in social equity. We want to make sure that small businesses have a chance to succeed. We do not think that keeping cannabis illegal serves any real purpose other than to put people of color in prison. Those kind of things have driven the legalization of cannabis for a long time. So it is, I think, consumers, and I didn't put any of the studies up here, but you can go and read them. Consumers are looking for purpose-driven brands in cannabis, partially because consumers often are also progressive. It differentiates your brand and product, the same thing. You can go and look at how consumers are viewing brands and products, and they are looking for socially responsible brands. They are looking for brands with purpose. They are looking for brands that have expressed that purpose in ways that are not performative. So in how you differentiate your brand and product, and Arizona is a small market, and it's, I think, a little easier to kind of differentiate yourself. But once we see borders open up, if you expand to another state, those brand stories get much more competitive. Arizona and California are entirely different. So it does provide you an opportunity to differentiate your brand. We just talked about it. Buyers will often try and purchase from companies that represent their values. And then I want to say it again, and I've said it a bunch, this is your anchor point and the story from which all development should occur. I pulled a couple cannabis company examples. I'm going to walk a little bit. Can you still see me? Our mission statement. So to lead, and this is actually, all of these are pulled from websites. So when we talk about putting it on your website or having these kind of forward-facing, these are all examples of forward-facing mission statements, vision statements, and value statements. So mission statement. This is actually a pretty big mission statement. To lead an industry in its infancy, such as ours, takes a few brave, bold visionaries. To charter the uncharted territory, to give credibility where credibility is due, to initiate initiatives. Maybe I wouldn't have quite said it like that. That's why you need stuff like an independent vetter. Initiate initiatives that will forever change what once was. This is what we're doing. So that's a great example of this driving force. We're motivated by quality and focused on you. Vision and mission, again, pulled right from our website. Vision statement, to be the regional hub for the commercialization of world-class medicinal and therapeutic cannabis products. MJC envisages being a leader in the transfer of knowledge and stimulation of increased interest in cannabis science globally. The mission, to become the commercial hub of an international brand of accessible medicinal cannabis products that provide an alternative to traditional drugs developed locally for international markets. And I want to point out too, the fact that I had access to a plethora of mission, vision, values for cannabis companies, I think is indicative that if you are not doing this exercise, you are missing a crucial piece. So I put this up here, your mission, your vision, and your core values, and I know you'll all be able to see the PowerPoint itself. So you could see, again, this is pulled right from a website, and this company, and I think this is the Hexo one, this is BC Compassion Club, excuse me, thought it was important enough to have their entire story on their website. Mission, provide high quality medicinal cannabis, natural health care, promote holistic approach to healing and living. Vision, this is like a world vision. And then core values, compassion, diversity, empowerment. You can see that that's reflective when we saw the other core values where they just listed, like Disney, where they said, here are our core values and individual descriptors. And that's what they're doing here. And finally, this is the HEXO one. HEXO enhances people's enjoyment of life by creating globally trusted brands of easy to use and easy to understand cannabis products. I mean, that's a great mission statement. You know exactly what they're saying. Vision. HEXO creates branded, consistent, quick onset and offset cannabis experiences delivered through a full range of powered by HEXO products developed in-house and in partnership with Fortune 500 partners. So I put these two up here because these are like very clear examples of cannabis, a mission statement that is the kind of emotional side, the driver side, versus just like the other vision statements we saw, these really kind of like practical statements that help inform customers, employees, and leadership teams. These are the remaining piece. HEXO also had their values up there. They value execution, they value collaboration, they value innovation, and they value integrity. We deliver on our commitments, we work towards our common goals, we innovate through our products and our business solutions. We do the right thing for our people, our shareholders, our consumers, our community, and our planet. Those are great core values. Anybody who looks at that, and I would urge you to take a look at the integrity one because they talk about shareholders. And I started this by saying that simply getting rich is not a core value. It's not a mission statement. It's not a vision statement. Providing value to your shareholders may be worth being included, especially if it's in your pitch deck. How to do this? So you get your license, you are going to start your company, and you realize that you need to go through this exercise because you're going to need to go raise money and you're going to start something real and you're super excited, you've got your team ready. What do you do? I would suggest, and again, these may seem like kind of simple directions, but it's worth giving a shot. So set aside a day to work with your team and the founders. So you really need to pay attention to this. This is not something you're going to sit down and do in an hour, and if you did it in an hour, you definitely blew it. So this is something that you need to spend some real time on, and we'll go through a number of different iterations. Create a guiding document to help everyone answer the same questions, meaning you will create an agenda or a handout, and that agenda or handout will say, why does cannabis matter to you? What is the most important part of a retail experience? What do you want to leave this world with? Those kind of things. What matters to you morally or ethically? Are you focused on, being more community oriented and you always want to stay a small business, or are you looking for global growth? Those kind of questions need to be written down and they need to be discussed one at a time. And having led a number of these, I would also urge you to be respectful of your co-founders and your team. I once sat through one of these and it was like all day, where every time somebody shared something who was not the CEO basically told them it was stupid. So, but the core value was open communication and we listen to everybody. So you see if you can untangle that. Some people use a moderator or impartial person to pose the questions. I think that's really helpful. There are a lot of people who can do that. They don't have to have any special training. It's really just someone there to keep the conversation going and on track. Work in whatever direction your team needs to, but attack one component at a time. So maybe the most important thing to you and your team are the values, right? You came to cannabis because, your mom, God forbid, had cancer and this helped, or because you believe in righting the wrongs of the war on drugs. And so maybe you start with the values side and you work up. What are your values? How does that inform your vision? How does that inform your mission? There is not a right direction to go. And in fact, picking which direction you do it, I think is often very telling for a company about where they're putting the most importance and emphasis. And I've said this and I'm going to keep saying it, getting rich is not a mission, vision, or value, but providing value to investors and shareholders might be. So Some people's mission or vision is that they want to be a multi-state operator and eventually be a global cannabis company. And that's like a solid mission. That's a solid goal, right? That's your aspirational goal. Largest global cannabis company in the world. So, people don't invest in your company because they like to give out hugs, or because they like to flush their money down the toilet, or because they have so much money it's just fun for them to write checks. You will find as you're out fundraising that people invest in companies because they want to make money. And so there's nothing wrong with putting in there, and wherever you think it's appropriate, that you're going to bring value to your investors, to your shareholders, to your corporate team. And value, I mean, not like, what are your values? I mean, actual real return on your investment. We talked about this presentation, and the reason why it was important for this to be part of the learning modules and to be thinking about this is because many of you are going to be new entrepreneurs. And even those of you who have had experience running a business, small or big, tech or restaurants, kind of can skip this part. What we have found, and you can see just by the companies that we've talked about, that having done this exercise, in addition to bringing together your leadership team, in addition to making sure everyone is aligned, provides real practical benefits to your business. And I hope that as you go through this presentation on your own, as you go through this exercise on your own, that you're able to, when you complete it, look at it and say, this is a roadmap for my company. This is a roadmap for me individually as a CEO or a COO. This is a direction forward. And I can put this up against my financial model. I can put this up against my brand story. I can put this up against my growth plan and say, this makes sense. This is coherent. There is connective tissue. And when you find yourself using your mission, your vision, your values in this way, that's when you know that you've done it right. That's when you know that it's serving its purpose. And if you're not having that experience, those are good times to go revisit this exercise with your team. It's also a good time to go revisit this exercise with your team if you have a dramatic leadership change, or you go through some sort of liquidity event, or you go through an IPO. There are places where you'll be triggered to go through this exercise for another time to see, does this really make sense for us? Is this really reflective of what we're doing? So I hope that you go through this slideshow on your own. I hope that you make this a priority as you're getting your business started. I would propose that this is just as important as your fundraising goals or any other corporate decision that you make. Thanks so much.